Welcome back to another episode of the Isn't That Rich podcast. We are here today with our guest, Kelly Green, to talk about CDs. They seem to be all the rave right now.
Yes. And I don't know anything about them, so I'm excited to learn. I say this on every podcast episode. I want to know more about a certificate of deposit.
Yeah, not the kind we used to play on the radio, or burn a CD. It's more important than that. No.
It's a bank CD.
It's a bank CD. And so, Kelly, let's get started. Let's tell us all about what a CD is, first of all.
So a certificate of deposit is it's a form of deposit that customers can put into a bank. So you're going to open an account just like you would a savings account, a checking account, anything like that. But it's really important if someone's going to make the decision to open a certificate of deposit to take a look at some different things with regard to their lifestyle. They want to take a look at the maturity of the CD. They want to take a look at how they want the interest to be paid. Do they want that to be compounded? Do they want a check? When are they going to need the funds? Is it going to be something that they've got a short-term goal that they're saving for, or is this something that they're not going to touch? Let's say that they have $10,000 and the funds are going to be used to pay for a wedding. Well, and it's, the child's a baby right now. You're not going to use that for 20 years. You might decide to do something different with regard to that. But it's also an option to use that for a long-term CD because you're not going to touch it, most likely. You have a fixed amount that you're going to earn over time. You know what that's going to be. So there's a whole lot there with regard to that. But basically on the simple aspect, a certificate of deposit is just a deposit account that someone opens up at their institution.
So it's essentially a savings account.
Correct.
Okay.
But kind of like an investment account.
Right.
It's a little bit different than the savings account in that the interest is probably going to be higher with the certificate because the savings account has more liquidity attached to it. You have access to your funds, where the certificate, it's locked up. It doesn't mean that you can't get to it, but you're going to pay a penalty to access those funds.
Wow, there's a lot to that.
Lots.
And so we're going to kind of go through it a little and simplify this for our listeners because I feel like it's just complicated. And
It's complicated and it's not. And also I think that CDs feel a little old school, or a lot of people in my generation don't really understand what they are, like why we would use them, but they're still a very good thing to...
They're relevant.
Yeah, they're still relevant. They're not something that's old, dusty in the corner. It's a great way to earn a little bit of extra income.
I think they've gotten a bad rap over the years about not being sexy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Investing is more sexy. It's one of those things where you want to get involved with the market.
It's more conservative.
It is more conservative. However, if you're a risk-averse person, a certificate of deposit, especially right now, is an excellent way to earn money on, or to earn interest on your funds and not have that risk.
So meaning you're not going to lose money on it.
Correct. You're not going to lose your principal.
That's great. All right. So let's just jump in with the first question. Why would I open a CD?
Why would you open a CD? A CD would be an excellent savings avenue for someone who is risk-averse. They have an idea of what they want to plan for, or they have no specific use for those funds. A certificate is a way to park your money, but have income come in over a scheduled period of time.
This is a great way to make a little extra money.
It's a great way to make a little bit of extra money.
If you're not using your money, lock it up.
Exactly.
So risk-averse just means that it's not as risky. Like you're risk-averse, you don't like risk.
Like I'm way more conservative. I don't want anything to happen.
You don't want to play the stock market. You don't want to...
You're not playing craps. You're not playing blackjack.
Right. You're not going to the casino
blackjack.
and spending a bunch of money. This is a safe and secure way to park your money, like you said.
Absolutely. And one of the things to make sure that people understand, too, when they're getting ready to open a certificate of deposit, especially if they have an amount of money over $250,000, make sure you do your research. Take the time to look around and make sure that the institution they're going to put the certificate of deposit in is federally insured, insured by the FDIC. One of the things that's crucial to know as well, there are many institutions that have the opportunity to insure those funds above $250,000 because they utilize a financial network that allows the insurance coverage to be shared.
Whoa.
You know so much.
Well, I guess it's being in banking for over 20 years.
Yeah, that's what I was
remember
gonna say.
way back when interest rates not that I was in banking at this particular time, but it was just an opportunity for us to get CDs booked and how we took care of the CDs for our customers. I remember seeing CD rates at 17.5%.
And that's like that's bonkers today.
Oh my gosh!
If there was a 17% interest rate on a CD, I'd be wealthy.
Yeah.
A lot of people use that as their tool. Basically, that was their investment for the future. That was their retirement fund.
Yeah. But you said also that what was a high interest rate as well? It's apples for apples.
Correct. You're going to pay more for a house. You're going to pay more for a mortgage loan. You're going to pay more for your car loan.
Yeah. Tell us what the car rate or the loan on a car was at that time.
I believe, and if I have this correct, it was somewhere around like 26%.
See. Yeah.
So it was just kind of crazy to think about that. But,
yeah,
just a difference in times.
Right, for sure. But I think of if I could invest something and receive a guaranteed, because CDs are like the interest rate is guaranteed.
Correct.
That's a positive thing about a CD. So if I could receive 17% interest and it's guaranteed, heck yeah, I'm parking my money in a CD. So
I know a lot of people like to think that investing in the market and mutual funds, et cetera, is the way to go for investments. But once again, if you don't want the risk and you're a planner, from the very get-go, when you put the money into the certificate of deposit, I know what my interest is going to be. I know when it's going to be coming in. You can plan for tax purposes for that as well, because that's, your interest income is going to be reported for your tax purposes. You can plan for those things. If you're a planner, a certificate of deposit is an excellent way to make sure your financial house is in order, you're staying within your budget, etc.
So why a CD over, say, just a regular savings account? Because we're talking about there are high interest savings accounts out there, like money market accounts, those kind of things. So why would you do a CD versus another savings account?
Generally, a certificate of deposit will always pay more than a money market or a savings, because you're paying for not having access to those funds.
Okay. So explain that about the bank. What the bank is like, we're going to give you a higher interest rate because we're going to keep this money and put it to work on our end. And so they know they have those funds
Correct.
for X amount of time.
Correct. Because if you're trying to budget from the bank's perspective, what money you have out there to lend to customers, a certificate of deposit is going to be locked up. So in general, people are not going to touch it. So a bank can take a look at their portfolio for their customers of what they've got on their books and their general ledger and say, okay, I've got $10 million in certificates that are going to expire in 3 months. They can plan out if they have a shortfall in the future. And that's the reason why many times you'll see banks offer specials for their customers, because they see we have a funding shortfall that's going to happen in about 24 months. So they can plan for that. But and that's to a benefit to the customer too, because that allows them the opportunity for a special CD rate that they can invest their funds if they have that available, and take advantage of that extra interest that the bank is going to pay for that.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about the interest rate, and that's one way I guess the interest rate on a CD would be determined, but what's another way the rate's determined?
Besides the government? CD special, yeah. Like, how does a bank set its rate for a CD?
Is it the Fed? All this mysterious stuff.
Yeah.
The Fed?
There's a lot of different things I think that come into play. Inflation plays a role in that.
Okay.
But the prime rate is... There's different market factors that are out there will dictate how a bank prices their certificates of deposit. Many times competition will come into play with regard to that too. What are the other financial institutions in the area doing?
Yes, because you can drive around and look at all of the signs
and
see like jumping back flips of a 5% signed CD for 6 months.
Right. And you see it all the time. It's like people call us too. What's your CD rate? What is your CD rate? Well, it varies depending on a lot of factors, like how long you want to put your money in there. So, I mean, that's a factor as well.
So Kelly, we're talking about interest rates going up over the past, year, 2 years? I don't even know.
It's been going up for about 2 years, right? Yeah.
Yes.
When that was going up, are CD interest rates going up? Because were CD rates, like, let's say when the 2020 happened, I would say it was in 2020, the 2% interest rate, all that happened, were CD rates low? Because they kind of have to be even with our lending rates?
Correct.
Because we can't be paying people a high amount of money if we're not making this amount of money.
Right. Your loan rates are going to generally be higher than your CD rates. And they won't always move in concert. There's going to be a little bit of delay there. from the banking perspective, where we have concern is when the interest rates are going sky high from a certificate or on the deposit side, and we're not keeping up on the loan side with regard to that. And then I've also gotten many questions from people, well, I see the prime rates going up, I see the loan rates are going up, when am I going to get more on my CD rate?
Yes.
So they do run together, but usually one's going to be ahead of the other, and then people have to make adjustments for those differences.
Well, like you said before, the bank, it really depends on them as well. Like if they have plenty of deposits, they're not going to run a CD special because they've got plenty in their bank
Correct.
to lend out.
So
they don't need to pay a high interest rate on those funds.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Ashley, you mentioned one thing with regard to all the banks putting their rates out there. One thing that's extremely important when someone is looking for a certificate of deposit, there's what's called the annual percentage yield. And that's the
APY. Put it on everything.
Annual percentage yield. And that's the deposit equivalent of what you see on the loan side, which is the APR, the annual percentage rate. When that yield or that rate is calculated, and there's a specific calculation for that, it bears out the different pieces to a CD of when the interest is paid, is it compounded, is it credited by check, et cetera, to the customer. So it's important for the customer, for them to be able to compare apples and apples with different institutions. Make sure you ask, what is the annual percentage yield? Banks are supposed to give that to them, and they have to disclose that whenever they are quoting a rate to a customer. But it's important to know what's the interest rate and what is the annual percentage yield.
Good to know.
Okay.
So we talked about the safety of a CD, that it may be more more attractive to risk adverse customers or people who are investing. So how are they safer? What ways make them safe?
Well, as long as the certificate of deposit is deposited with an institution that is federally insured, basically the money is just going to sit there, and you're not going to have the opportunity to lose it. In the market, you don't know if you are investing your principal into mutual funds or something like that, you're at the risk of the market, whatever it's doing. So if something tanks, your principal could be at risk at that point. With the certificate of deposit, the money just sits there, and all it does is earn interest for you. So as long as it's deposited with a federally insured institution, your money is safe.
So let's do this. We'll firm this up. So if I did $1,000 in a CD for 6 months, because you can do different lengths, and we'll talk about that. I did $1,000 at 5% interest rate. Firmed up. When I cash out, I'm making $50.
Correct.
Sweet. So do the math on some bigger.
So if you did $50,000 or all the way up to that $250,000 that's FDIC insured, 5% back on that would be quite a bit after 6 months.
Yeah. So that's nice for planning purposes. You'll know I'm going to make $500 after 6 months, depending on how much you buy a CD for.
And one of the tools that people tend to use, especially, and I've seen this a lot over the years, someone has, let's say they've got $1 million, and that is basically the equivalent of their pension or their 401k. Many times what they will do is what's called CD laddering. So they will take a look at what the rates are, what they want to have come in each month, so they can break that $1 million up into smaller portions and have an income stream from the interest that they can bank on. And so they can also stagger those out where you might have a 5-year CD, a 4-year CD, 36-month CD, what have you. And the interest rates for the longer terms are usually higher. So they can invest in those and have a high interest rate, but also keep some CDs that are on 3-month terms. So if they have an emergency that comes up, they have access to those funds much more quickly than that 5-year CD is going to be available to them. And so it allows them to have an income stream from their interest, take advantage of the higher interest rates, but then also have accessibility. And then another thing that people can take a look at too is there are CDs that are considered liquid. So depending on the terms, and that's where it's important to do your research before you put money into a certificate of deposit. Do you have the opportunity to put more money into that specific CD, or do they allow you for an emergency situation to withdraw a certain amount? And Jill, back to your question about, what's the difference between a certificate and a savings account? You can withdraw money from a savings account for the most part whenever you need it. Certificate of deposit, they're not going to let you do that.
Without
but
penalty, yeah.
Correct. But there are opportunities with certain CDs that will allow you to take a withdrawal if you need it before it matures, and you won't have a penalty involved with that. And once again, there's also some that will allow you to add extra funds to it without having to close the certificate out and open a new CD with that institution.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, so I love this laddering thing. So let's use the $1 million. I love a scenario.
Yeah.
Let's use $1 million. So you're telling me this is the way it works in my brain. They could get 4 CDs and stagger them at a 3 month,
3 months, 6 months,
6 month,
year,
9 month
12
to a year, all $250,000 in each of those.
Correct.
And then so they would live off that chunk for 3 months, and then
get another 3 months.
Get another 3 months, and then move that money
to another CD, maybe.
So you can have as many CDs as you want.
Correct. And then the other thing that you can do too is
That's cool.
Sometimes certificates. So to go back to that opportunity with the special that we were talking about when banks have the funding shortfall, many times those will have a finite term. So they'll tell you that this is going to be a 15-month special, and you don't have the opportunity to renew it. It's going to, you have to do something with the funds when they mature. But most certificates will allow you the opportunity just to have them roll. So you don't have to do anything with them. They can just sit there. And so with the scenario with the laddering, more times than not, those are going to be ones that are just going to auto renew. You have a grace period that you can say, okay, I'm looking at this and I want to maybe do something different here. So then they close it out. Otherwise, an auto renew CD just rolls over. Don't have to touch it. Don't have to do anything with it.
But you pull the interest, right? And let the principal roll.
Correct.
Okay.
And when you say roll, is it going into a savings account? Is it going into, say, in a CD? Because you're not going to get that same amount of interest rate because the market comes into play then, whatever their CD rates are at that time, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's important to take a look whenever a certificate of deposit is going to mature. The institution will usually send what's called an interest advice, and it will give you an idea of what the rate's going to roll over to. So it allows you to have that opportunity to make a decision. Do you want it to sit, or do you want to do something with it different? The other thing to think about, once again, is just if you brought up the excellent point, Jill, that it could actually go to the customer by check. It could go into their checking account. It could go into a savings account, how they want that interest to pay, or if they want it to just go right back into the certificate and have it continue to roll and just build on the concept of compounding interest.
I love that.
I do too.
I'm going to go check out a ladder at Farmers State Bank after this.
Yeah. And I want to get back to the ladder too, because I know a lot of people are concerned, the whole FDIC insurance. Mm-hmm. And if you have $1 million and you want to put it all in one bank, are all 4 of those $250,000 CDs covered, or is it just the one?
So it would depend.
Okay.
There's always that it would depend.
Yeah.
The certificate of deposit, you can title those with beneficiaries, so they can be payable on death, and or they can be in a trust. So the way you title the certificate of deposit will potentially offer more FDIC insurance coverage depending on how you title it. But once again, go back to that option where there are certain institutions that utilize a financial network. So if I have $1 million and it's just me, I would want to try to find a institution that offers the network for that, because then anything that I have with that institution over $250,000 is going to be shared with other institutions that participate in that network. So then I don't have to worry. And once again, we're back to being risk averse. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about my principal losing that because a bank failed.
Right. And that's the only reason why someone would need the FDIC insurance, is because if your bank fails, then you're guaranteed that money out of
Correct.
it. Okay. Well,
so
cool.
you want to pick a good bank.
Yeah.
Like Farmers State Bank.
Look for that FDIC insured sticker on the front door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And on all the name badges that we all get.
Exactly.
For sure. So now I'm looking at like the pros that we've talked about so far. So we have the higher interest rates than savings or money market accounts. We have, it's guaranteed money. Like it just sits there. You're just parking your money and you're getting that interest you agree on. It's federally insured. If the bank goes bankrupt, you still get your money. And it avoids spending temptation. So those are the real 4 pros that I see we've talked about.
Especially the latter one. If you are really trying to save and you think, boy, if I put that in a savings account, I might touch it, the certificate of deposit would be an excellent avenue for you to go down to make sure that it's just going to sit there.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about some of the cons.
Okay.
We talked about some of them a little bit. What are some of the cons why people might not want to do a CD?
So the cons would be, we kind of touched on it just a little bit. You know, if you need to have access to those funds because of an emergency, you're going to pay a penalty.
Okay.
And so what that looks like as a rule is going to be a factor from the interest rate itself over a period of time. So let's say, Jill, you've invested a $100,000 certificate of deposit and the interest rate is 5% and you need it. And this is where it's important to shop around, know what that penalty is going to be if you're going to have to pay it. More times than not, for a year CD, you're probably looking at a 3-month interest penalty. So $100,000 times 5% for 3 months is going to be, you know, whatever that is, but that's what you're going to cough up from the interest. Depending on when interest is paid and when you need that could actually eat into that principal amount. So the $100,000, you know, may come from the principal itself. Now you've already received interest in things from the certificate before that, most, you know, depending on, you know, when you invested it and what have you. But there is going to be a penalty that you're going to have to pay. The only exception that there really and truly is with regard to that penalty is, for some reasons, you know, the account holder passes. They need those funds to be able to take care of final expenses, etc. The institutions are allowed to waive that penalty in that instance. But that's pretty much the one main reason why you can waive that.
Okay.
What if somebody wasn't a beneficiary on that? What if they didn't have beneficiaries on the funds?
With regard to
So
what you just said.
So say you're single, you do this CD, and there are no beneficiaries on it.
And then
What
you
happens
pass
to the
away.
money?
it goes to the estate.
Goes to the estate. Got
Correct.
We know all about that.
it. Okay.
Yes, it goes to the estate.
Okay.
Okay, so what's another con besides the penalty for a CD?
It's just the liquidity of it. It's not necessarily the most liquid, and that's not to say that you can't have access. Just know that you're going to pay that penalty. With a savings account, you can walk in the door, do a withdrawal, and you've got your money. And you can get just what you need. So if you have to have access to the funds and the certificate of deposit is the only thing that you've got sitting in reserve, you're going to take that full amount, unless it's one of those certificates that we kind of talked about where people will allow, or banks will allow you to do a withdrawal for a one-time event. But let's say that you've taken advantage of that one opportunity, you may have to withdraw that full amount if you need your money at that point. And so then that penalty comes into play.
Another con I kind of think about is like you're parking your money for a certain period of time and the market might get even better. So say you lock in a 1-year CD and all of a sudden the CD rates go from a 4 to like an 8% and you're still stuck at that 4 for the whole year.
That's where that financial calculator comes into play.
Yeah.
You do your math. All the math teachers out there will love that. Do your math and say, okay, so what does it look like if I take my penalty and I reinvest it at this new rate? What is the differential on that going to be? Does it make sense to do that? And that's, that's the same concept that people look at when they're looking at refinancing their house. What am I going to save by refinancing my house as opposed to the closing costs that I might have to come into play?
Right.
So it's just a matter of the pros. Once again, the pros and the cons. Do your math. Take a look at it. Say, what is my interest that I'm going to earn from the new rate, and what am I going to lose from the old rate? And if you're going to make more on the new rate, then it would make sense to go ahead and cash it in and do something different at that point.
Do the math.
Do the math. So I want to talk about, so I am ready to open a CD. I go to the bank. How much money do I need to invest in a CD? Can it be $5? Can it be $500? Like, what are the minimums? And does it vary from bank to bank?
It may vary from bank to bank.
Okay.
That's where, once again, do your research. make those phone calls, check out the websites, etc., where you can see all the information with regard to a certificate of deposit. Whenever you are calling a bank, they do have to give you 2 pieces of information. They have to give you the annual percentage rate, and they do have to tell you what the minimum deposit required is.
Okay.
And usually, as a rule, a smaller CD will require a smaller minimum deposit. Some just keep it easy, and they say the minimum is going to be $1,000 across the board. You just have to have that. Usually with a longer term CD, or when that's going to pay a higher interest rate, they may require a higher minimum deposit as well.
Okay. So if somebody were to open one at Farmers State Bank, do we have $1,000 minimum, or does that vary, or do we know right now what that looks like here?
I'm sure it's on our website.
Yeah.
Being as a part of the loan department now, I don't keep touch with that as often as I probably should, but I know that our minimum deposits would be out there on our website, and then our customer service representatives would be happy to provide that to a customer should they call.
So it has to be public information?
Yes,
Okay.
that's required.
Okay. So you can go to other people's websites and look.
Yes, that's required in Regulation D. We don't go down that road, though.
That sounds
That's all compliance. Womp womp.
Yeah. So how do I decide which CD term I should choose? And what are the different terms? Is it 1 week? Do we go by months?
Well, that's going to be your choice, Ashley.
Oh.
You're going to need to take a look at what your needs for that money are. When do you need to have access to interest? It just depends on your own personal situation. So you just got to know yourself.
What are you typically, and I know you said you're in the loan department, but over the years, what have you seen most people do? Like how many months? Average? Or does it vary?
It really does
Definitely
vary.
varies, I'm sure, but...
What I have seen over the years is if someone has a high dollar amount, usually they will go short term and stagger those out. So they have that
doing
income
that ladder.
stream. Correct. But once again, it's a personal preference.
Okay. Do you see like a lot of first time CD buyers going short term just to fill it out?
I think so. Yes. But it's not going to be like the 3 month, 6 month range. It's going to be that year.
Oh.
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and it's surprising that there are many younger people that are actually going their certificate of deposit route now.
Yes.
Because once again, we kind of talk about the sexiness of the market and everything about all the different ways that you can invest and just how easy it is to be able to do from your phone.
Well, say what you said earlier about like the market being down right now, and you're like, I wish I would have, which hindsight's 2020, but I wish I would have known the CD rate was going to go to 5% right now because I would have put my money in that.
I think one of the things that I think about at my age, I'm getting closer to retirement, hopefully. Not that I don't love my job at Farmers, because it's
You
fantastic
can't retire.
here. I love it. But over the last couple of years, looking at my 401k and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just lost 15%. You know, have that initial freak out moment.
Yeah.
If I could have the opportunity to take what I've invested over the years in my 401k and have a guaranteed return of 5%, I would take that every day of the week.
Right.
Because I'm a risk averse person. I don't want to lose what I've worked hard for.
Right.
That's why you will not see me at a casino or someplace like that throwing down money into the pot or anything like that. I want to keep what I've earned.
Right.
And a certificate of deposit is it's safe.
I have a question, because we talk about other investment tools like an IRA or a 401k, and we understand, we talk about how they're taxed. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you'll be taxed with the CD. Because is it just, your money that you put in there is already taxed, but so how are you taxed on what you earn?
So the interest that you earn on your certificate of deposit is going to be just like a money market or a savings account. You're going to get a statement after the end of the year. Your 1099 interest is going to show what you earned on that certificate of deposit. What's important for people to realize, if you do have a certificate that, let's say the interest is paid at maturity, but it's over a year. So you have an 18-month certificate of deposit. You're not going to get your interest on that because it's rolling into the certificate of deposit. When you do something with it at that 18-month time frame, that's when you're going to get the principal and the interest. It's important for people to know during that year, at the end of the year, the interest that you have earned, you'll be taxed on that at that particular point. So it's not going to be that you're going to be taxed only when the interest is
coming to you.
Come to you. It's going to be as it is earned and credited to your account. So that's why that 1099 is super important, to make sure that you provide that to your tax, if it's your accountant or whoever prepares your taxes, that they have that information. But it's taxed as it's earned.
Yeah. So it's important for you to receive that 1099 for any savings account. So whether it's a Kasasa saver or Kasasa checking account, you'll get that 1099 at the end of the year. So make sure to save those and actually turn those in.
I know. We were talking about this earlier. I said, rats, the government's after my Kasasa account too.
Your interest on that account. Okay, so you
swear.
just get taxed on the interest.
You always get taxed on the interest and when it's earned, not necessarily when it's paid to you.
Oh, got it. You'll be taxed dependent on your tax bracket.
Correct.
So however much you make.
Correct.
And you're only taxed on the interest, not on the principal.
That is correct.
Because that's your money you already had.
Correct.
That's already been taxed.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. You're so good, Ashley.
Tax advisor.
She's getting it.
I'm a CPA. That's not true. Okay. So what happens to my CD at maturity?
It depends on how you structured it when you open the account.
I guess I'm asking, what do I do with that money?
So you can do one of two things. So as a rule, when you open a certificate of deposit, they're going to ask you, do you want this to be an auto renewable or do you want it to mature? And so when it does come to that maturity date, if it's an auto renew, it's going to automatically renew, but you will generally have a grace period of 10 days to be able to do something with it should you choose to. If you let it roll and decide on day 11 that you want to do something with it, that penalty is going to come into play at that point.
Good to know. Good questions to ask.
So does your bank notify you, like, hey, your CD's coming?
Do they call you?
What does that look like?
You should receive a notice in the mail that lets you know that that's going to happen. It's important to note too, okay, and I've seen this over the years too, where a CD matures, it's not an automatically renewable CD, and the money just sits there. And so what's important for people to know, if that happens, it is not earning interest while it's sitting there. And then as far as the bank is concerned, we have to account for it differently within our books as well. Mm-hmm. It gets transferred over into a different part of the general ledger, the deposit side of the bank. But what's important for the customers to know is if that matures and you don't do anything with it, it's sitting there not earning you any money. You're not earning any interest. So do something with it.
Yeah, no one wants that $1 million sitting in the bank not earning any interest.
Sure. And, that's one of those things, too, where, we just had the legacy event and people were talking about planning and things like that. That financial planner that we have for people to utilize, it's important for people to have those out there because the instances where I've seen the certificate sit there after maturity, the people didn't know that the person had it. They passed away, and so it was just sitting there. And so, obviously you don't want that to be turned over to the state after a certain period of time, but you want to make sure that something happens with it and then it's, earning.
Yeah. I think it's important, like you just said, to tell the beneficiaries that they are on the account should something happen to you. We talked with Taylor Shanks about it in a previous episode, and she said the bank's not going to call the beneficiaries and let them know, hey, your mom had a CD at our bank. I heard that through the newspaper that she passed away. You're a beneficiary on this account. Congratulations. You just inherited this CD.
Which makes no sense to me.
I know, but think about it. Like, it's just important to have those money talks with your kids. Like, the more you can talk about how you intentionally saved and how they can save, keeping those lines open is important too.
It's a hard conversation to have. Mm-hmm. It really and truly is. But I've had that conversation with my own children. They know where things are, and I've got to be better. I need to get a hold of that financial planner myself and write it down for them. Yeah. But it's important for people to know that you need to have those conversations. No one wants to think about the end of their life, but you've worked hard for those funds. Make sure that they're going to go where they're supposed to go, and make it easy for whoever you've designated as your executor to take care of your business.
For sure. Well, I'm feeling so much more positive about CDs as a savings tool. Aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Especially with the market right now, the way that it is.
Yeah, they're just more attractive. Higher rates.
Yes.
I'm going to go buy one
I
right
know.
as soon as we're done here.
So, do you think anybody's concerned with, what does it look like when I open up a certificate of deposit? I mean, what do they need to have?
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk
So
about
what do
that
I
really
do?
quickly.
So it's just like any other account. You're going to want to make sure that you have a driver's license and definitely want to have your social security number because of that wonderful thing called interest that we're going to get taxed on. We have to make sure that we have the correct number there and what have you. But you go into your institution with those two pieces of information. Do your homework, understand how you want that to be structured, and if you're fuzzy about anything, make sure to ask those questions. But a certificate of deposit is not something to be scared of. It's not any different than a savings account or a checking account. They're just going to ask you a few questions for the data entry, and you're going to get a nice little piece of paper that you walk out with that shows your face amount is $250,000 or whatever you invest into the certificate of deposit. But it's a very simple process.
Good. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Kelly,
Yeah,
for being on
My
today.
pleasure.
I know everything about CDs now. I'm no longer in the dark, Jill.
I know it. Let's go open one right now, right? Thanks again,
Yeah,
Kelly.
thanks,
It's my
Kelly. This
pleasure.
has been so much fun. I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you if they want? I know you don't open CDs, but if they want to chat with you about banking, how can someone get a hold of you? And where do you work?
I would love for them to come visit me at our brand new location in Heron at 720 South Park Avenue. They can always reach me too at our phone number, which is 618-942-0034. My extension is 5305. Love to talk about banking, especially love to talk to people about financial education just in general. Mm-hmm. I hear this all the time from people just out on the street. They just don't teach that in schools anymore. It's like, well, no, but we have to do that. We have to be responsible and good stewards and teach our youngsters and everybody in general about financial education.
Yeah, I know that's a passion of yours.
Absolutely.
So. Well, we appreciate you being on today. Thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
See you next week. So, Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our news.